Why is it that after so many attempts at closeness, you didn't become more socially confident, but instead grew quieter, more cautious, more reserved? Not because you suddenly disliked people, not because you decided to isolate yourself, but because something subtle began to shift. You noticed that after every interaction, you felt drained, that after small talk, you needed solitude just to recover. You stopped responding as quickly, stopped sharing as freely, not because you became cold, but because you sensed deep down that connection was starting to cost you more than it gave. Why did you gradually realize that you no longer had what you would call real friends? Not that there was no one around, but when you imagined being truly overwhelmed, you couldn't think of anyone to turn to. You weren't sure your feelings would be taken seriously. You weren't sure your vulnerability wouldn't become a burden. So you learned to keep things inside, to process emotions alone, to handle joy and pain quietly, by yourself. You began telling yourself, "It's okay, I can manage." Not because you didn't need anyone, but because you had grown too familiar with the feeling of hoping and being let down. And why, even though you still long to be understood, do you now hesitate to get close? You became sensitive to small changes, tone, response time, subtle shifts in energy, not because you're suspicious, but because your body remembers that closeness has not always been safe. You don't avoid friendship. You simply learn to pause first, to observe, to protect yourself. After enough disappointments, your heart made a quiet decision. If getting close means getting hurt, maybe it's safer to expect less. If any of this feels familiar, today's video isn't about loneliness alone, and it's certainly not about what you did wrong. It's about a gentler, more honest question. What actually happens when someone goes a long time without stable friendship? And how does this quiet loneliness slowly reshape the way you feel, think, and connect with the world? Most people who have no friends didn't start out that way. In fact, many of them once tried very hard to connect. They shared sincerely. They opened up. They showed patience, understanding, effort. But over time, they kept encountering the same pattern. Their feelings weren't truly received. Maybe you spoke up when you were struggling, only to be brushed aside. Maybe you shared something important, only to realize it hadn't really been heard. Or maybe there was a quieter realization that you were always the one doing more emotional work, while rarely feeling understood in return. None of these moments felt dramatic. At the time, they may have seemed insignificant. But psychology shows that repeated low-grade emotional disappointment shapes behavior more deeply than a single dramatic rejection. So you adjusted. You spoke less, expected less, shared selectively. Not because you stopped wanting connection, but because when there was no response, handling things alone felt safer. Over time, you appeared independent, quiet, not very social. But psychologically, this wasn't indifference, it was adaptation. You didn't stop needing friendship. You learned too early how to survive without it. From a psychological perspective, long-term lack of friendship isn't just emotional. It physically changes how the brain evaluates the world. Human brains are wired for belonging. Throughout evolution, acceptance meant safety. Exclusion meant danger. So when you repeatedly reach out and repeatedly experience dismissal, misunderstanding, or neglect, your brain doesn't simply get used to it, it learns. This process is known as learned social avoidance. Gradually, your brain links initiating connection with discomfort, rejection, and disappointment. To protect you, it lowers your impulse to try. You may notice yourself not sending messages first, hesitating to suggest meeting, pulling back before closeness begins. From the outside, this looks like detachment. From the nervous system's perspective, it's self-protection. But when this pattern persists long enough, loneliness becomes the default state. Your brain begins to believe no connection is safer than unstable connection. That's why, even when kind, open people appear later, you still feel tense, still hesitate, still keep distance. Not because you don't want closeness, but because your body remembers the cost. People who have no friends are often labeled as too sensitive, overthinking, or too introverted. But this sensitivity is rarely a flaw. It's often the result of prolonged loneliness. When stable social feedback is missing, the mind searches harder for cues. A delayed reply, a subtle shift in tone, a moment of silence. These details become amplified, not because you're paranoid, but because your brain is trying to prevent pain. It scans for signs of rejection even where none may exist. Over time, you grow cautious, unsure when to approach or retreat, worried that your presence might bother others, so you reduce yourself. Less contact, less expression, less expectation. What others see is distance. What's really happening is vigilance traded for safety. And that vigilance makes escape difficult, because every attempt at closeness feels like another gamble. If this resonates, remember, nothing is broken in you. This is a profoundly human adaptation to prolonged emotional isolation. When someone goes a long time without friends, the first changes aren't external, they're internal. You still function. You work, study, socialize politely when needed. From the outside, nothing appears wrong. But internally, you begin living in two worlds. One is the version others see, capable, composed, doing fine. The other is private. In that inner world, your feelings have no echo, your thoughts aren't mirrored. Joy and pain circulate only inside your mind. Psychology shows that without consistent emotional witnesses, our sense of self slowly blurs. We don't know ourselves only through reflection. We know ourselves through being seen. When that mirroring disappears, life begins to feel distant, as if you're observing yourself live rather than fully inhabiting your experience. This isn't depression exactly, it's not numbness either, it's emotional absence, and it's one of the most exhausting consequences of long-term loneliness. Many people without friends tell themselves one sentence: "I'm fine on my own." And in some ways, that's true. Solitude brings control, predictability, fewer disappointments. But psychologically, something shifts. When expectation leads to pain repeatedly, the brain adapts by lowering expectation itself. You stop hoping, stop sharing deeply, stop reaching out. You begin treating not needing anyone as a strength. But when expectation is suppressed long enough, the ability to feel nourished by connection weakens too. You no longer feel disappointed, but you also stop feeling moved. Pain decreases. So does joy. Eventually, life doesn't feel empty. It feels muted. Not because there's nothing there, but because you stopped extending your hand. Society often implies, if you have no friends, something must be wrong with you, not interesting enough, not social enough, not likable enough. Psychologically, this assumption is cruel and inaccurate. Many chronically lonely people possess deep emotional awareness. They notice imbalance. They sense insincerity. They feel neglect sharply. Because of this, they struggle to stay in shallow connections. They want depth, but depth once hurt them. So they become selective, not defective. Psychology tells us people avoid environments that caused harm, even if those environments aren't always dangerous. So your loneliness doesn't mean you're undeserving of friendship. It often means you endured too many moments where connection was careless. When someone stops forcing themselves into unsafe relationships, they may appear lonelier. But healing has quietly begun. You may still carry an unspoken question. Is something wrong with me? If I were more outgoing, more normal, more effortless, would this be different? Psychology offers another possibility. Many people without friends aren't incapable of connection. They're highly aware of when connection is unsafe. They once tried, they cared, they showed up, and after repeated emotional neglect, they learned to pull back. This isn't failure, it's protection. Loneliness is not proof that you are unwanted. Often, it's proof that you refuse to keep losing yourself in unequal relationships. If you have no friends right now, your story isn't over. You're learning discernment. You're learning the difference between being needed and being respected, between attention and care. One day, when you no longer chase belonging, when you stop shrinking to stay connected, you may notice something unexpected. The right people arrive more easily. Because you're no longer seeking from emptiness, you're allowing connection from wholeness. You're not behind. You're preparing for a safer form of closeness. Until then, be gentle with yourself. This is Felix. May you understand yourself more deeply and treat the growing version of you with kindness. See you next time.